Mulder. He leads the computational biology group at the Institute of Infectious Diseases and Molecular Medicine at the University of Cape Town. The group's goal is to become an exceptional, internationally recognised research and training centre, addressing the challenges of bioinformatics capacity development in South Africa. My view is that Nicola Mulder has already met this goal, actually, and that she's applying what she and her group have achieved nationally and internationally throughout Africa in the ECCB project. Nikki was an early adopter of the ISCB competency profile and has used it to develop new curricula in both the research and the clinical setting. She's going to talk to us about applying competency-based approaches to HBA bioinformatics or pan-African bioinformatics education. Okay, thanks. So I'm going to talk a bit more about 3 different ways we do competencies, 2 where we have to sort of retrospectively do it, and 1 where we've done it to drive the program. So the outline is I'm just going to give you just one slide, what is H-Africa and H-Violence, what is Pan-African Initiative, and then these are the 3 different examples how we'll give the competency-based training. So H-Africa is a human registry in Northern Africa. So it's an NIH just funded initiative to drive genomics research in Africa. It's looking at the genomic and environmental determinants of diseases in Africa. So it's a lot of population genetics, GWAS, genomics and the environmental impact on diseases. And then H3 is a big Pan-African bioinformatics network which I run, which is designed to develop the bioinformatics competencies and genomics competencies to do this research in Africa. So it's 32 institutions in 14 different African countries. So what we have to do when one of our big jobs in H3 is to build human capacity. We need to train bioinformaticians, we need to train data scientists in general, bioinformatics users, so the genomics researchers who just want to do some bioinformatics to answer the research questions, and more recently we've had the need to train medical professionals as well. So we're doing this through various different approaches. For bioinformaticians, we've developed master's programs, we have specialized courses, we run hackathons, we have shadow teams. So when we have a development project, we have a shadow team, or an analysis project, we have a shadow team that can learn on the job. And we provide internships, so it's face-to-face, so some people sit in the lab for 3 months. For the bioinformatics users, we run specialized courses that also a big part of shadow teams and internships. And for genomic medicine, for medical professionals, we've now started genomic medicine online training. And we work with all these different groups, including GOBLET, ISCB, Elixir, and EBI. So the first example is the master's degree in bioinformatics. So the persona types here is sort of divided into 2. One is the bioinformatics engineer, which is more like what Bruno was talking about. So they might do masters and then go into a service environment, or they may do a bit of research, but more on the engineering side. So maybe a core facility scientist, a bioinformatician in academic or research infrastructure support role, maybe a software developer. And then the other persona here is the bioinformatics scientist who will use bioinformatics for research. So they will be the researcher who is entirely in silico, so they'll sit on the computer bed and go near the lab. And so they're discovery biologists and maybe do a little bit of algorithm development, but it's mostly really an analysis using public data or collaborative data. So we've worked on developing the curricula for these, particularly in the African setting. And we've also developed a guidelines document. So based on what we've got, we've developed a document that basically says, if you're just starting a master's degree from scratch, this is what we suggest. In terms of suggested curriculum, how you would set it up, how you'd approach a university, how you would sort of divide course times and content. And that's all available on the web. So we established a sort of core and elective module. So we looked at some of these papers that Lonnie mentioned, where there was a set of potential topics that should be covered in a basic bioinformatics degree. And we separated these into core and electives. So the core ones are that everyone should know. Electives are pretty much based on the stream that you want to take. So if you're more of a bioinformatics scientist, so doing more about analytics and interpretation, versus an engineer where you need to do a bit more modeling, a bit more algorithm development, biostatistics. And also depending on the research interest of the institution. So we wouldn't teach proteomics, if the institution didn't have a mass spec or any proteomics equipment and was not doing nothing in that area. So those would be the elective modules. So we have a task team that basically puts together all these elective and core modules, the potential content, contact hours, put these guidelines together of, if you have this, to put this together, what sort of order you need the modules to be in. And then also for our settings, so for resource settings where we don't necessarily have trainers available, we also have suggestions on how you would sort of structure this in your university and share resources across multiple institutions. So for example, if you were having a basic statistics course, you go to your statistics department, computer science course, you go to that department. But there were certain bioinformatics modules which neither of those departments had any qualifications in. And that you could then sort of pool students and do these bioinformatics modules as a shared set of modules. So there's a website where we've got all this information. And what we've done is, for every single module, is we've put information like, it was prepared by possible lecturers, specific outcomes, knowledge required, some prerequisites, some resources, suggested content, sort of an overview, how you would assess them, how you should weight the course. And since this was all done before the final ISCB competencies set came out, we're now remapping these to this new state of competencies using the methods that Bruno and Russell have mentioned. So this is an example module page where we'll have all this information. So we've got this for every single module, so anyone can go have a look at this in terms of the theory content, the practical component, how you would assess students, and as I said, the last part of this will now be the competencies that will be addressed by this particular module. The second example is an introduction to bioinformatics course. And in this case, the persona types were bioinformatics users, so they just want to do some basic bioinformatics for their research. So this could be a lab technician, a biocurator, discovery biologist, an academic scientist. So that was what the course was actually aimed at. When we started running the course, there were loads of people who wanted to join who were actually bioinformaticians or computer scientists or software developers who were very specialized in a particular bioinformatics area, and they wanted a general knowledge of bioinformatics topics, so they just jumped in there. We did tell them that they wouldn't know anything because they had no biology, but they eventually managed to pick up the old word, sort of definition of what is DNA, what is a gene, what is integration along the way. And in this case, the format was very different to sort of the courses that we described so far, because the demand was so high, we needed to cover a very big audience. And because we had to take on this particular sort of online format, we had to use web-based tools. It was the easiest to cover in a very large format with very different classrooms that have very different resources. So we aimed to just teach bioinformatics tools and how to use them. So we ran this big introduction to bioinformatics course. So we ran it actually as an online, a distance learning approach. So it ran for 3 months over 2 days. So we ran it in 2016 and it's running now in 2017 again. There's some more information. I'm presenting this in one of the last sessions tomorrow. More details on the format and the distance-based format. But basically, we had 20 classrooms connected, virtual classroom, physical classrooms connected to a virtual classroom. So we had real classrooms in those, but the lecturer was somewhere else teaching. And we used various different mechanisms to teach that. The kind of courses, the modules we covered were these. So it's really just some basic, broad range of bioinformatics topics, so that the basic bioinformatics user could analyze some of their data. They weren't going to be an expert in developing software in the algorithms themselves. And so again, we've now got we're doing the mapping of these competencies based on the persona. So the persona that I mentioned before, actually two of the persona from the ISCB competencies. And so we will now be able to refine these. In fact, we have refined them already based on the ISCB competencies to really define the learning outcomes and the competencies for each of these modules. And each iteration will improve the course. And then the final example is genomic medicine. So we identified that there was a need to train healthcare professionals in Africa in genomic medicine, because people are increasingly using genomic data. So we've established the African Genomic Medicine Training Initiative. And it's not just African, it's very global. So we've got some members here from the EBI, from various institutes all over the world that have joined our initiative. And here the persona is basically the healthcare professional who needs to know about how to implement genomics in the clinic. So it's nurses, physicians, ethicists, but also your clinicians and scientists. So here we wanted to establish an adaptable genomic medicine curriculum and training plan that was relevant to the African settings. I'll come back to that, but it had to be competency-based. So in this case, we really, because it started more recently, we went through the competency process, we really started from the competencies rather than the curriculum. So we developed a set of competencies for nurses first, and we're busy working now on other healthcare professionals. So the course objectives, starting as I said with nurses, was to have a set of case studies that are relevant to Africa, so diseases that are known to affect African populations, genetic tests that are able to be run in Africa, and then other additional topics that would use these case studies in their teaching. We set up our key learning outcomes, and then really focused a lot on the design on the core competencies. So a lot of work has been done already in this. So for example, the various papers, the NHS, with CAF being very involved in this, had developed this almost white paper on clinical bioinformatics training. And so we were going to reinvent the wheel, so we worked with these people to adapt the competencies from there. And this is just an example of the NHS competencies, which is on board here. But the other thing we did was we went to the nursing community and we created personas from nurses in different settings. So a rural clinic was going to have a very different set of competency requirements to somebody working in a very busy city hospital. And the nurses worked together with a competency task force to actually develop a set of competencies that they want for genomic medicine. We then mapped these competencies to these different personas, map outcomes and contents to the competencies and developed the whole course from there. So again, this is being implemented using that Introduction to Bioinformatics online distance learning course. The first iteration is busy running, so started in April, it's running for 15 weeks. Nurses are a bit more difficult to teach because they have a very strict working hours. They can't just jump out and go to lectures for 3 hours, and they only have a certain amount of time they can work in. Same with physicians. It's been so popular that all the clinicians keep sneaking into the rooms and we keep trying to push them out again because it wasn't designed for clinicians. So we will work on the clinicians next. We've basically got 19 classrooms in 10 different countries. And the nurses are thoroughly enjoying this because they were involved in the process of developing what they want to learn. So this is the distance learning system. So we have these physical classrooms. We have two systems, so one is for assessments, for discussions and everything, and then the other one at the bottom is an online, so you actually sign up online. Each classroom is physically present in this online system with the slides in the middle and a chat session on the right, and they're all together for about 2-3 hours a week. As I can talk about more, we've got a poster on IBT which describes the system in more detail. So just to sort of sum up these different examples, what we've learned from these, so some of them we had to design the course and then do competencies later because they come to competencies a bit later than after we designed the courses. But now we're moving far more towards competencies first and then designing the curriculum around those. So we can design this based on very specific persona because we've run many, we've got 40 different courses over the last 3 or 4 years. And we find that the expectations of people is very important, and it's very important that you have to find that beforehand. You define the persona, and if you don't have that persona in your classroom, you're going to lose that, you're not going to meet the expectations of the people in your classroom. So you really need to say who is it you want to train, tell them what competencies they're going to come out with, and then they will be satisfied with the course that they go into. And many times they say that what the prerequisites, but don't believe them because they don't, most of the time they don't. So it's very important to focus on who we want to teach, what we want them to know, and what we want them to do after the training, and have ways of assessing that as well. And then also we experimenting with different learning strategies for implementation. So, flipped classrooms, distance-based learning, all these different formats. So there have been a number of different people involved in these different initiatives, and I'm thanking us from the NIH. Thank you.
So how do you manage the student-led competency selection versus the trainer knowing you need these competencies?
So we've never used the students, but anytime we got them involved was when it was nurses. Because we don't, as bioinformaticians, we don't know what nurses need or prepared or interested in knowing. But we would then bring in what we think we should know as a genomic person, and they bring in and they will come in and say, well, actually that's never relevant, I'm never going to see that in my clinic. But we wouldn't try that with a bunch of students.
Right.
Thank you. Africa has several universities that we really want to have program running out of their curriculum. Which approach is the best Africa using in trying to have is the breaks? Curriculum development for the universities that do not have any idea.
Yes, so that's what the master's degree is, where we actually got a whole lot of universities in Africa. We all went to Botswana, and we just all the ones who were interested in creating degrees that we knew about, and we discussed it. So we came up with that together with those universities. They came in with their problems, their challenges, and that's why we also looked at the resource limited setting of sharing courses and that. So that's what, so we developed this document that now explains how you would go about starting with what the suggested curriculum is. We even got suggested trainers from Africa that you could use if you don't have anyone at your institutions. So we've got a whole webpage that describes it for people who've done that. So Malawi started the first degree program. Mali started the first degree program using this, that successfully graduated the first master's students. But there is NIH is about to fund a whole lot of 3 or 4 different groups in different African regions to start new programs as well. So there are a number of different initiatives that are helping.